seeing anger as anger, hatred as hatred, etc., requires a tremendous amount of trust. It requires us to be naked, in a sense, to be completely vulnerable to what is happening. Because it's extremely compelling for the person to become courageous enough to not identify with the experiencing of the thing that is anger-inducing or hatred-inducing. But we're always been used to identifying with things. The Buddha always went back to this conceit of I am that we as individuals, as beings have. He called it asmimana, the conceit, the clinging of the idea, the identification that this is who I am. This is my experience, and this is happening to me. It's so subtle, it has so many layers to it. But just to see things for what they are without adding an iota of involvement into the mix, now that is something quite challenging for the mind to grasp. Just the idea of that. Which requires trust. When we're going into the uncertain territory of, well, non-identification, the mind has a tough time to deal with that. That's why it loves labels. I am this, I am that. So, trusting uncertainty is about making space, that soft, welcoming, kind, protective space around the uncomfortable, the uncertain in life, which requires a great deal of fortitude and courage to be with the unpleasant, which is anything but an easy task. So here, direction is more important than the speed with which one travels. What I mean by that is, one bears the burden of always honestly checking to see to which or what kind of target one is headed towards. So we often forget how direction is more important than speed or our velocity with which we go towards the target, the destination. This is a crucial truth in and for all walks of life, but especially when we are talking about the Dhamma, and how the desire to attain a certain state, be it mundane, such as desiring to live a problem-free kind of life, a pleasant type of life, with no obstacles, or something that is more supramundane, such as attaining a jhanic state, a blissful state, or even nibbana. Both of these often lead to having the person push and shove by putting in more energy and willpower, which inevitably makes the person become more and more anxious, which is the result of becoming more impatient. And by the way, that keeps on growing day by day. All thanks to the underlying current and the strength of the almighty craving, which, by the way, often goes unnoticed. Meanwhile, in other people, it's the opposite side of the spectrum, meaning there isn't enough, sufficient amount of energy being placed in the task at hand. Proper amount of striving. They're too lukewarm, if you will. Too laissez-faire attitude. Too, let me just be. We need to have sufficient amount of energy, which makes this absolutely indispensable, essential for the work to be done, especially in relation to the direction that is chosen. So we need to put more effort and consideration in checking in discerning the direction itself, or the destination, or the goal. What I'm hinting at or trying to highlight here is having the right view, the right understanding as to why we are sitting, for example. Why we are choosing to live the kind of lifestyle that we find to be much more tolerable at the end of the day for ourselves, involving mindfulness. Why do we come to these Zoom sessions? Why do we even sit once a day, twice a day? Why we even become aware of our thoughts, of our behaviors, of our speech during the day? So what I'm trying to encourage you with here is checking in to see our attitude, our intention. Is there right view? And not just by the way, at the beginning of our journey, but at every interval. Especially when we meet those unpleasant, unexpected knots, uncomfortable vortexes, if you feel like, of situations that were completely uncalled for, completely unnecessary for life to throw in our direction. And that's when we need to stop and really evaluate our understanding as to our reaction to this situation that just took place, because that undesirability of that situation indicates a state of discomfort, unsettling fact, which then inevitably lends us to a state of becoming more angry, with ill will. And all the mindfulness practice, all the jhanas, everything, insights and whatever, everything that comes along with that goes out the window. And then there is this sense of guilt, remorse. And we start to self-sabotage ourselves. And thanks to what I was mentioning earlier, asmimana, the conceit, I am. Who got sidetracked? I did. Who is a major disappointment? I am. Because everything was going so perfectly. So this brings the soft spotlight and places it gently on the importance of mindfulness. And in the presence of becoming more and more forgiving of ourselves. So there's so many things to be keeping Well, to be kept in check, which I've chosen the word direction, just the word direction, to describe all of these things, which the Buddha used, sammaditthi. Sammaditthi means the right view, harmonious perspective, if you will. But it's not a one-time thing that we just, yes, I have right view and I'm practicing. Well, that's not enough. It requires us to always be on the saddle, if you will. You know, a horseman jumps on the saddle not just once. They don't just hold themselves steady on the saddle just once. So long as they're deciding to be on the horse, riding this horse, they need to be on it all the time, aware constantly, and not taking anything for granted. So once the correct direction is chosen, one is aware that that is not the end of it. Because doubt will always be there, so long as we're not arahants. Doubt is always going to come and creep in, pop its ugly head every once in a while. It will be there to pull the rug from underneath us. And the best tool that it uses is the situational uncertainty, the encounter of uncertain situations that we are inevitably going to encounter. So instead of pushing that away, expecting life to be certain, which is another form of craving, the Buddha always encourages us to become a little bit more welcoming of situations, circumstances, with the understanding that all things that are conditioned anyhow are impermanent. They're not going to last. So in essence, if you think about it in a commonsensical way, you can see that there's really no need for us to identify with anything. Anyhow, it's going to go away, good or bad. So why do I need to invest myself in this thing by calling it mine? I shall defend this with the very last drop of blood in me. Why? Why hold this very stern, firm position towards wanting things to be a certain way? And why can't we become a little bit more flexible? So what is required then is patient discernment and wise consideration of taking our time. The Buddha used to call them hiri and ottappa. Previously they used to be called fear and shame and fear, you know. I try to stay away from those renditions of these terms because they say a lot more than that, and they're a little bit more constructive than that. So please bear in mind that the impatience that lingers in the background is none other than craving, doing its sneaky thing, trying to sabotage. And that's why it's always important to bear in mind that tranquility of your mind is mission number one. There's nothing more valuable than that. The moment we notice that the mind is agitated, all hell's going to break loose soon enough. Because you lost the steering wheel. You lose the steering wheel, it's gone. Even if you are the most well-trained Formula One driver, it's gone. Even if you're driving the most sophisticated piece of machinery that requires a steering wheel, it's gone. So, Nibbana requires a steering wheel, if you will. But once our right attitude is there, the intention is there, obviously right view is there, and the person is aware as to how much energy is to be put in this circumstance. Remember, it's always fluctuating. We cannot just keep flooding this process with tons and tons of energy and expecting it not to burn up. It's unhealthy. The mind is going to be agitated. For this reason, the Buddha talked about the Satta Bojjhangas, the 7 factors of awakening, within which we find energy or virya. But these are all factors that work much like a seesaw. Just the right amount of virya. When, for example, you're getting drowsy and dullness is kicking in and you're drooping over, which means you're left your object of meditation. You're in la la land. You're dozing off. You need to add a little bit more energy. Perhaps a little bit of joy, just recalling a certain jhanic state, or just some joy, a memory of a joyful event. Boom! You just balanced it. We don't go into samadhi or passaddhi, which is tranquility of mind. And then there's the investigation of states, Dhamma vichaya. Okay, where's the mind? What is the mind doing at this point? Without question, just becoming aware of it, and the mind says it all. We don't need to add any more chit-chat in there. And when there is sufficient amount of samadhi, and the balance is finding its shape, this beautiful seesaw, harmonious state, there is upekkha. And when we have the 7 factors of awakening working so harmoniously like an orchestra piece, boom, nibbana occurs. But this requires, right, at that moment when you're allowing things to take their own shape, as it were, you're trusting it enough to, as long as the direction has been chosen, it's like that long-distance swimmer. Every once in a while they're checking in to see, okay, is the target the destination within the crosshairs? But they're not popping their heads out of the water and just looking and looking and looking, because that's too much virya. They're going to burn out. They're going to drown, in fact. They're going to waste too much energy. But every once in a while, you look and you see the direction. You're there. Okay, fix it a little bit. Okay, put your head down and keep going. Keep gliding, swimming through, trustingly. And all will be taken care of. Because you've already done the work. And this is why I mentioned how this whole process requires tremendous amount of fortitude, courage, trust in you. Trust in you, in your goodness. Instead of trying to beg existence to kind of give you this nibbana thing, or this state of incredible whatever. Because every moment of your life is crucial in bringing us closer to this. So long as we're putting the best of our abilities and our hearts into this. So, I'm not going to talk much today, but I wanted to open up make more time available for any questions. And I would like to even make a day where instead of any desana, any Dhamma talk, just we straight away jump into any question you might have. And perhaps next week we can do that, where throughout the week you can think about questions that come up. In the next session, we can just straight away jump into addressing those questions and concerns. So, starting from now. So, yeah, go ahead. See. Any thoughts, questions, comments, critiques? Yes.
Thank you for the talk about that. It felt very relevant actually, and but one of the questions I have is, I really struggle find my mind sort of wanders that much, and I've pinpointed it down to the fact that I don't think that I'm interested in the object of meditation. I can't be, because even when the mind quietens down to the point where it almost comes to a stop, it just goes back into thinking again. Because I'm just like, oh, okay. I don't know if I've got that much going on, like physical life, that when I got to sit, it's just got so many other things on it, like to throw at me, and I can't really find anything solid to stay with. Yeah.
What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that becoming the object of meditation?
Well, I mean, what's the difference in that than me just sitting down and not meditating and just having a good think? Because that's basically what I'm doing.
Well, you described it beautifully earlier, like all the state with all its nuances, and you gave us somewhat of a 360 view of it. In contrast to the object, this ephemeral, this foggy object of meditation, which keeps on slipping through your fingers like a wet soap. Why can't we just turn that state that you're in? Because that's what is being experienced, right? That's a perfect opportunity for the mind, because the mind is the thing that knows things. The object cannot know itself. The mind is the thing which knows. This is mind work that we're doing, by the way. It involves work. Whichever way you cut it, it will require work. The last thing you want is just to flail your arms and just throw everything in the air and say, it's a waste. I'm going to just give up. Let's go home. It's done. Can we just turn the whole thing around and just observe that? Anything is an object of meditation that is occurring, that is coming to the forefront, to the projection screen of your experience. See, I'm not one who says, no, you have to look at the object of meditation and hold on to it like this crystal ball or whatever. That is not as authentic as meeting that person on the road and all of a sudden they give you, they flip you off or something. They yell at you. What happens in that dynamic, in that interaction, in the mind? That is what this practice is leading us to. Do you get sucked into that experience? Well, if you were holding on to this object, this external thing that you're trying to bring into your mind, chances are you're going to drop that vase and you're going to hold this new experience. Mindfulness is out the window, by the way. But if your mind is able to pick up any experience that you're having, the most pronounced experience, right now you're sitting there. Is there any sensation, let's use the body, any specific experience, sensation in your body that is demanding the utmost attention from you? Perhaps it's your foot, your ankle is misplaced, or in an awkward position, or your hand is, or you're not sitting equally on your buttocks. However, whatever it might be, there is one specific sensation that is being delivered to your mind. Is the mind able to pick it up? Now, the Buddha gave us different tools. He gave us the body. He gave us the breath. He especially gave us the Brahma Viharas. But these things fluctuate. But one of them is definitely going to be in the foreground. One of them. At one time. Now, is the mind going to be there to greet it? To be there with it and say, hey, I've been waiting for you. That is your awareness. That is your mindfulness. How is this working? Is it working for you at all? Or is...
Yeah, it is fine actually. Yeah, thank you.
Do you want to tweak it, change it, or some of the imagery? I don't know. Do they match? Or?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I won't go into it. Maybe we could speak another time because I don't want to touch on something a little bit too deep. For maybe anybody else listening, I don't want to confuse other people because Yeah, but that does that. Yeah, that's fine. That's brilliant. In fact, thank you.
Sure. Please send me a private message and I'll address it more.
Thank
Yes?
you.
Yes? Jagat.
Yeah, thank you, Bante, and Anthony. I'm a very materialistic guy, so I tend to think of meditation or coming to the Zoom gatherings in this kind of way. I don't know whether it's relevant or not or helpful. I just think of it as a compass, as a real compass, like maybe a brass one or nickel or steel one. And of course, compasses, they have different directions: north, south, east, west. And when you move a compass, it usually, I don't know, somehow the needle, no matter which direction, it kind of, I guess because of the magnetic forces, it does usually go a certain way, unless the compass is kind of like broken. But and then I think of my experience and my life as different islands, whether it's LA or other places, islands of experience and so forth. Then I think of whatever I learn, whether it's the Dhamma or other kinds of educational things, good or bad. It's all part of this compass. And, of course they have, the north, south, east, west, but then in between though, there's little degrees of, where you're going. Sometimes, it seems like one slope is really off, but sometimes, surprisingly, seems to be going in the right direction. So I actually visualize the actual compass, and that's how I do it. It's kind of childish, but that's sort of how So I look at the Dhamma and the Buddhism as being a sort of for sake of a better word, maybe moral or spiritual compass. Then I try to materialize it too. So that's where the daily life comes in, because you could say, oh, okay, am I actually kind of going in a certain way, or am I really going like too far south, or really off? So using these physical material structure, it allows my mind to be more free to comprehend the more abstract things, qualities. Anyway, just thought I'd share my kind of technique.
Well, thank you for sharing your technique, because I find it to go beautifully in line with what I was trying to say earlier about the direction, the importance of knowing and evaluating properly our choosing of the direction versus the speed at which we're headed towards it. And oftentimes I see people choosing the wrong direction, meaning having the wrong view. And they're going full speed ahead. Well, good luck. And that's the epitome of ignorance. The Buddha called it moha. And the choosing part of the direction, as you pointed out, you're always aware of it, like a compass. You can't just look at it once, right? You need to constantly check and see, okay, am I veering off? So, absolutely, and that's where the mindfulness comes in. The mindfulness itself is not enough, right? So mindfulness needs to be there, but clear comprehension, which is another word for wisdom, or discernment, which is another word for right view, needs to be working together. And both of these working in unison is the epitome of living wisely and courageously, and with some level of responsibility. Responsibility. Because after all, we are our own lives, have our own lives to be responsible for. No one else's. No matter how much we care about this person or the world, ultimately, our responsibility lies with this individual. That's it. That's where we have the biggest say in things. And having the compass, using your examples, and being, sticking to that, and not without any, extra attachment to it, rather, being flexible with it, but understanding of its cardinal points. I think it's healthy. Thank you for that image. Yes?
The other thing, if those of you who are, not into compasses, but maybe into carpentry, I forgot what you call it. It's a level where you have a little, usually a glass dome, and I think it's filled with oil.
Oh, yes,
right?
yes.
I forgot what you call that. Not a level, and then it has a bubble inside.
Yeah.
And then, when you measure the level, whether things are straight, the bubble actually, you can see right away, whether it's off or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before you actually start constructing or laying down a beam or something. So, there's a lot of tools in everyday life that I think one can actually use, or or if you're a knitter or sewer,
Mm-hmm.
well, there is the needle, the needle and the thread. I mean, you do have to kind of find that point in order to put the thread through, otherwise it's not going to work.
Exactly.
But I think we can find things in our everyday life, no matter what your occupation is, or your interests, or your hobbies, to actually maybe utilize them to, as tools for what we're doing. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes.
I would like to comment to the first question that was asked. After the question, I had the image of this, as if the situation where you have something sticky on your body, you're desperately trying to unglue that from your body, and just that process reminded me of times when I would be struggling and thinking, and then just the word surrender usually would help me become aware of what was going on before that word came to my mind. There was that intense warfare to just get rid of that sticky presence with the help of thoughts, one thought after another, just like the Russian dolls. You open one, there's another one inside, there's another one inside, there's no end to it. And sooner or later, it doesn't matter, whenever I was able to bring that to my, somehow what's going on, and it's a relief. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you. It's the mind is the trickiest thing, It can be our worst enemy, but it can also be our best friend. Many of us go on a head-to-head combat or head-on collision with the mind. And what we're doing is basically we're doing surgery on the mind when we're meditating. We are trying to make the mind do something that it doesn't, necessarily want to do often. So instead of adding more forcefulness into this whole process, because the mind is not going to go away without a fight. So the sooner we can talk with the mind, become friends with the mind, that's where, when I said gliding or just swimming away, instead of forcing our way through the mind, it kind of allows us to have less resistance from the mind, in a sense. I know I'm using it as a third person, but we need to understand that this mechanism called the mind, or using the organic, representation of it, the brain itself, is the result of billions and billions of years of evolution. So it needed to cope with difficult situations, fears, strife, challenges, just plain old survival in the face of insurmountable odds. All these things cause the brain to come up with different forms of negotiation with the outside world. All of which necessitated the presence of what the psychologists and neurologists talk about as the negative bias. The negative bias. So it also gave itself this persona. There's this body, and I'm going to protect it at all costs. And in fact, if I can't protect it, I'm going to shut down. So I don't find myself present and awake to experience this horrific situation. What I'm describing is, the fight or flight or freeze, especially the freeze part. Now, when we are saying to the mind, listen, it's okay, this calmness, this, many people come and say, what is this? What is this incredible state that I don't know what to do with it? So they're panicking. What they're describing is equanimity. I mean, imagine. The mind has gotten so uncomfortable with the state of balance, where it's not in this topsy-turvy state of going to either extreme. It's reached, in fact, this beautiful state of equipoise, of balance. The mind doesn't know how to negotiate that. What is that? So slowly, slowly we allow the mind to become more restful within that state. So what I was referring to earlier, like outside circumstances, situations that can be so daunting, difficult to withstand, if the person is able to bring in that sense of equanimity into this dynamic interaction, if you can squeeze that in, even edgewise, a little bit, maybe connecting to your body with the breath and noticing how your breath is becoming more intense as the person is gesturing at you, yelling at you, or whatever. Noticing how there might even be a gap in your breathing because you might have held on to the breath. Because the brain is saying, this is dangerous. I am being threatened here. Can I take this guy out? Should I run away? Why don't I just go ahead and freeze like some mice do, some rats do, when the danger is so overwhelming? They just freeze. And the predator comes and checks them, taps, just pokes at them and sees that they're dead, seemingly, and go away. The brain has these functions. So all these things, these commotions are taking place. The example of upekkha, for instance, bringing in that sense of equanimity and becoming comfortable with it through the meditative practice allows us to kind of ride like a surfer these difficult waves, where the high and the low won't affect us as much. And this is where it's crucial for us to consistently maintain a solid form of practice. Not just the official practice, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours a day. Not just that. That's a piece of cake. But bringing that, if you will, a fermented version of that into your life, where you can hold on to the mindfulness's hand with you, irrespective of whatever conditions that may arise in front of you. But holding it gently, that's where I said the gliding, which requires trust in your goodness. You don't have to go and carry that refrigerator up the hill, on a slippery slope. Just doing enough, and letting the rest of it take care of itself. Just making sure the direction is right, okay? All right, just putting in sufficient amount of flame, amount of energy, and you're good. And whenever that guilty, angry feeling comes up, becoming aware of it for what it is. I always imagine how the atmosphere around the Buddha must have been like. when people came in and asked questions, or his students would sit there for hours meditating in, quiet silence, was there any strife? Was there any tension? If there were, the person was unable to go into deep levels of meditation. And in the suttas we read, these people were like, wow. So what that also indicates is a level of safety, in contrast to the mind having this negative bias of, oh my God, the world is out to get me. And now this guy over here is forcing me to sit for 2 hours to hold on to this object of meditation. So there's a battle going on both fronts. So basically what I'm trying to say is relax. Take it easy. The Buddha never had a frown on his face. I've never seen one. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? We still have time. I've been traveling a lot in this COVID-19 thing, and it's amazing to see so much tension on people's faces everywhere. Flight attendants, customs officers, immigration officers, people you see in different places, in different airports, or even when you land. People are just like in this panic, which, we need to be cautious, yes. But this panic, worry never got anybody anything. Anything good, that is. Fear has its positive sides, of course. We can all agree on that. Wise fear. Being cognizant of, if I do this, then there's going to be some major damage. But worry itself, so please, let's leave worry and extra strife and demanding so much of ourselves from the practice outside. Just leave it out the door. Because it's the surest way I've discovered in my own practice that it will impinge upon, it will completely sabotage the work that we're trying to do. But we don't realize this often enough, in my experience. And the best antidote to that is just to crack a smile. Just to kind of invite that light mind back into the scene. There's a beautiful image of Venerable Ananda describing how a quail, I think it's Venerable Ananda or Venerable Sariputta, one of them, he says, holding the quail or the dove too tightly will strip it of its life. It will kill the animal. But to keep your hands completely open will let the animal, the bird, to fly away. Just holding it gently. Just approaching each moment and each experience as a meditation object, for example, in answer to your earlier question. Because the life is always throwing different things at us. It's never the same. It's never static, right? Anicca, the Buddha called it anicca, impermanence. These are not just some terms that we can frame and put them on a wall. These are things that are happening to us. No one has to tell us what they are. We know. But we seem to forget in the heat of the moment when our practice really must make a difference. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Yes.
Yeah, I like what you just said there, Bante. I think it's particularly definitely prominent now, especially because I don't know what it's like everywhere else in the world, but Paul will be able to confirm this as well. People are starting to panic buy again in the UK because we've just been fed fear for so long that somebody at work the other day genuinely told me that their mother had been to the supermarket to bulk buy toilet roll for Christmas. For Christmas, so she's bulk buying toilet roll 3 months in advance. So, like, I think what's important now is that we do embody the practice in the way that you're teaching, because I remember when this first happened at the start of the year, but of course we didn't have winter ahead of us when that was happening. Then we were coming out of the winter season, so people weren't going to get the common cold and things. But now people are going to be panicking for like 6 months. So this is really like, this is like potentially like the ultimate test actually to our practice, I feel, because when I mean, I am going somewhere with this, but when this happened last time, I was on Facebook, and I'm no longer on it now, and I used to like just post a picture of like an average size shop, and I was like, this actually feels really good. While everybody's going out their way to bulk buy as much as possible, I'm going in and buying like 5 items because it just feels good. But actually, that was me in a way suffering, because even though I did feel good, I was like wanting to try and control everybody else. Look what I can do, using it to do this as well. I was panicking without even realizing it. So can we just simply like just internalize it? And if we're a good example, then that's great. But if you can try and embody it inside yourself, that's like the ultimate test, I think. So it's in line with what you've been teaching recently, and I think that it's good for the time that we're approaching now, Bante. So thank you.
What are your thoughts, Paul?
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you for thanks for opening this space. There's so much information today that's been really helpful, because Anthony's first question actually was what I'd come away from the meditation, and I literally thought the same thing. I was like, well, what was the point of that? Like, I was just sat thinking, but then what other people have said about the compass, and the word surrender got used, and I love that. That kind of reminded me about the person that I was a few months ago that didn't trust his own intentions, who I now do. So the benefits of the meditations, are quite vast, but internal, because I'm still living in the same house and the same job and doing the same routines, but I'm doing it with a different sort of energy. So then I started thinking about being humble and grateful for an opportunity to sit and close your eyes and clear the space of your head for metta to maybe get stronger by surrendering, which was the word that somebody used, I can't remember now, but it sort of really sat well with me, because to surrender to what that sitting was means that something positive will come out of it in the next sitting, potentially, if I stay humble and grateful that I have the opportunity to do that. And that's kind of what I was thinking about. And yeah, also I think it was my mum that was bulk buying the toilet roll, Anthony. So shame on her.
Sorry, that was hilarious.
Well, it could be an art project, who knows? She's going to be locked inside the house, so who knows? Thank you, both of you, for sharing that. You're voicing the concerns and the thoughts, I'm sure, of many of us around the world. So thank you for that. Again, just the practice does not need to involve results that could happen in the future or might. Because the moment you say to yourself, or you change the attitude in your mind by saying, you know what, what's the point of this? What's the point of this? Well, wait a minute. I don't care what the point is. Let me just relax. Let me just be with this. You just open the palm enough for things to be. Just to be. You know, that's what I was saying earlier about why do we have to take it so personally? Just this anger, this experience of hatred, or even panic. This woman that you know, which I'm presuming is not Paul's mother, perhaps, I mean, from what I can surmise or presume is that she's panicking. There's fear, there's worry, da. Now, if we can include an element of mindfulness in there, and a sense of mature cognizance of what is happening for whatever is happening's sake, apostrophe S, then the person can sit with that experience. And that's what I meant by earlier, to create this safe space, this buffer zone between the experience itself and the mind that is observing the experience happening. Instead of adding that bridge, that gluey, crazy gluey bridge that makes it ours. And now we're sucked into the whole turmoil, this tornado. And good luck pulling yourself out of that without some kind of damage to your tranquility of mind. So creating that buffer zone is what the Buddha also, you know, one of the key figures in the suttas, the Buddha Sasana, as far as I'm concerned, is the hermit who ran the distance from modern-day Mumbai all the way to Savatthi, which is almost on the other side of India, near Bihar, where Bodh Gaya is, very close to it. Savatthi is where the Buddha spent 25 vasas. He ran there, just stopping, just get some sleep, and then because he wanted to see the master, he wanted to hear from him the teachings. And guess what? The teachings he got was some of the shortest, most succinct instruction you can ever come across, especially of the Buddhas. And the gentleman's name was Bahya. Bahya of the bark cloth. Bahya Daruchirya, that's his name in Pali. And he says, 3 times, he begs the Buddha to teach him. Meanwhile, he's like panting, because it took him a long time to get to see the Buddha, because he wasn't in the monastery. He had gone on alms rounds. And the student said, no, you can't go to him because you'd be disturbing him. He says, no, you don't understand. So he rushes to the village and he finds him, falls on his knees and says, Master, please give me a teaching. And the Buddha says, Bahya, now is not the good time for it. As a great teacher he was, the greatest in my book, he utilized just assessing the mind state of the student. And Bahya again asks him, meanwhile the mind is calming down, the breathing is calming down. He says, Bhante, please give me the teachings. And the Buddha says, Bahya, now is not the good time for teaching. The Tathagata has gone to his alms round. And then finally he says, Bhante, I don't know when I will die. I don't know if the Tathagata is going to be alive in the next moment. So please give me the teaching. At that time it was the most opportune time for Bahya to receive the teaching. And the Buddha, I'm paraphrasing, he says, Bahya, when seeing, let there be just the seeing. When hearing, let there be just the hearing. And he goes through the other senses, and then he says, when there is only the seeing, when there is only the hearing, then you're no longer in it. When you're no longer in it, you're no longer of it. Meaning, there is now this sufficient space, this buffer zone between the sensation, the experience, and the mind that is observing it nakedly, without extra investment, emotional, psychological investment into the thing that is happening. And guess what? Right there and then, Bahya becomes an arahant. He was the fastest to become an arahant just from such a short saying. In fact, the other bhikkhus, by the way, he died because there was a cow that came in and mauled him just with his horns, and he died right there on the spot. And the Buddha, on his alms run, on the return from the village, he saw the body, and he called to the bhikkhus and he said, "Bhikkhus, cremate your fellow in the holy life. Cremate your fellow student, your fellow bhikkhu." He wasn't a bhikkhu, but at that moment the Buddha called him a bhikkhu because he had become an arahant. And after they cremated him, they came and asked him, "Bhante, where is the destination? Where is he reborn into?" And he said, "Your companion in the holy life is done. Completed the holy life. There is no more coming or going for Bahya. He completed the noble task." Just by seeing, just by hearing what is hearing, without adding any more of oneself and our own narratives to it. This is not an easy thing, by the way. Of course you know this. But the more we practice this, to kind of separate ourselves from being so pulled in, then we start to kind of glimpse into what Venerable Bahya did. To me, it's one of the most encouraging stories that inspires me every time I am reminded of it. If such a person could do that, and just first seeing the Buddha, just once. Of course, he had enough merits in his past to even see the Buddha, to be born at the time of the Buddha, of course. But the willingness, the direction that we were talking about earlier, the right view was so dead on. He wasn't going to deviate. Wow. Quite inspiring for us. 26 almost centuries later. So I encourage us to keep reminding ourselves with snippets like these from real life people who have come before us, who have dealt with life, difficult life and circumstances, just like we are in our own capacity, as they did. And they really made a difference. That's why I say the Dhamma is alive. So long as we can hear about the Dhamma, the Eightfold Path, and there's proper teachings of the Eightfold Path, and there are people who are properly practicing the Eightfold Path, those are the three criteria, the requirements that the Buddha said. If these three are there, the world will never be short of arahants. Never. So long as these three are there. Forget about everything else. Rites and rituals, throw them out the window. All these things, labels, da-da-da-da-da, all these out the window. Can we at least practice the Eightfold Path? And keep encouraging, inspiring ourselves in each type of pleasant or unpleasant experience. So that is what I would like to leave you with today. And I highly encourage you to see if you can jot down some questions that you might have about the suttas, about this, because I'm also thinking of in the near future, once I get things settled down and the jet lag kind of balances out, to go ahead and start doing commentaries of suttas, which I've always wanted to do, but because of my other work that I'm doing with translating of the suttas and recording and uploading them on YouTube, initially I was thinking to do those. Now I'm working on Anguttara Nikaya, book number 4. There's 11 books. And then the Samyutta Nikaya and the Sutta Nipata. I thought that the day would probably never come for me to do the commentaries as well. So I said, okay, we can do probably intermittently together, at the same time. So I haven't decided as to when, but I'm really excited to start that. Just like, this story about Bahia, for example, in that sense, not getting into scholarly textual analysis. I've done that years ago. It's very dry stuff, not alive at all, in my opinion. So I like to incorporate stories and commentaries just to the extent that they can be inspiring and encouraging enough for us to maintain a solid compass-based directional path. So, but of course you will know beforehand as to what dates, etc. But our schedule with the Zoom, I want it to continue indefinitely, until further notice. But we're set for the future, a few months, as long as toilet papers are still there in the supermarkets. Anyhow, it's lovely to see you, and thank you again for the personal, real-life examples and the personal challenges that you trust enough this setting to come out and share, because people are listening to these talks and they are inspiring others, and because it's not just unique to ourselves, of course. People will resonate with these challenges. So thank you for sharing generously at that too. So I'll see you next week, and hopefully with questions and explorations. And for now, let us do a sharing of merits. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find health relief. May all beings share in these merits that we have thus acquired, for the acquisition and achievement of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, and devas and nagas of mighty power, share in these merits of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Bhante.
Most welcome. Sukhi hotu, may you be happy and well, and may the Triple Gem protect you always.